All right, let's take you through our top story tonight. We know we're looking at fuel price rise across the country. There is fear that fuel prices have increased. Now, is it a fact or is it just claims made? What's really the story on the ground? Let me take you through the real fact. It indeed has increased, but with just one oil company raising prices, it seems like nearly 7,000 fuel outlets or petrol bunks across the country, which they own, will see this price rise, but not all. Fuel prices seem to have gone up, but not everywhere. Nayara Energy has increased petrol prices by up to 5.3 rupees per litre for petrol, and diesel increased by 3 rupees per litre. This is a private company, Nayara, that runs about 7,000 petrol pumps across India. Now, here's the key point. This is not a nationwide price hike. The government companies like Indian Oil Corporation, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited and Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited have not increased prices. It's just this Nayara one company that has increased it and seems to be the largest company in the country, largely owned by Russia, or rather Russian investors. They are still selling fuel. Indian companies, Indian-owned companies are still selling fuel at old rates, but this one company has increased prices, and that's led to panic. We're looking at panic buying already. The war in West Asia, of course, pushing oil prices up. So concerns around the Strait of Hormuz still continues, though Iran very clearly has said that there is safe passage for Indian ships, and India can move its oil across the Strait of Hormuz. But nonetheless, we're still looking at a crunch and a constraint as oil prices across the globe has gone up. Russia, even though we are buying from Russia, which is closer and easier, Russia also selling oil to India at a higher price. So it seems like this company Nayara is passing that to the people of India, that hefty price that they are paying. They're trying to make it up through increasing fuel prices locally in the country. But yet, there is no crisis as such that we see. To what extent it could get worse, we don't know. But at the moment, all that we can see is panic buying, because there's no fuel shortage as such. Oil is certainly getting expensive. Shipping is getting risky. Transport costs are rising. Nayara has passed on this cost to consumers and customers. But people are largely just worried and buying excess fuel, not because there is a shortage. That's panic buying, and that's led to artificial shortage. That has really led to artificial shortage at this point. In cities like Hyderabad, long queues were formed. Nearly 40% of petrol pumps ran dry. Well, fuel was available, but people are just worried, just in case they want to fuel up. The reality, though, India very clearly says as a government that we are not facing fuel shortage. We have enough. We have months of stock. India is in a slightly better position. Like I did mention, Iran has indicated clearly that Indian-linked ships will move smoothly through the Strait of Hormuz, and that gives India some cushion. But the government has a buffer. We're looking at the government of India also, and also the government at this point has a buffer with taxes and past gains, which also helps control prices, and that's what the government is doing. It's passing on the benefits to its people in the times of this war. So for now, we're looking at some cities where prices have gone up, or rather some petrol bunks, but not all. In Delhi, by and large, around 94 rupees is the petrol price, and diesel price is 87, which is stable, same like old prices. But that said, we're not too sure what comes in the months or weeks ahead. The bigger picture across Asia is bad. While India is still managing its way, we're looking at countries across Asia that are really struggling at this point. Philippines has taken emergency measures. It's called an emergency because of fuel price rise and the war in West Asia. Philippines has declared emergency in their country. Thailand is asking its people to save energy as much as it can. Singapore is using reserves very carefully. Vietnam is controlling prices and sourcing new oil. India, on the other hand, is holding prices steady. So in that sense, India is doing fairly well. But this is definitely a warning signal. If the war continues, oil will stay expensive. Shipping will remain risky. Can India, for long, keep fuel prices unchanged? We have with us Mithili Nikore, who's a founder and chief economist, Nikore Associates. We also have Professor Bijan Mishra, consumer policy expert, and Nishchal Singhania, president of the Delhi Petrol Dealers Association. Thanks very much, all of you. If I start with Mithili, give us a little more, Mithili, on India artificially delaying a fuel price correction. Right now, all this while citizens would criticize the government, saying that fuel price across the globe has dropped, but India is always charging high prices. But today, in times of crisis, it seems like by and large, India has not increased prices. Nayara, one firm has announced an increase. As much as we would say it's just one firm, we should also remember that they are the largest firm in India. They own around 7,000 petrol pumps. So that will certainly be, we'll see an impact for sure on the ground today onwards.
Hi, nice to meet you. I think we've been on shows before, so just first correcting the pronunciation of my name. It's Mitali Nikor, and of course, I have a long association with the
Apologies, Mithali.
News9. So I think we are not as we don't come on shows together as often as Karthik and Krishna.
No
So
worries.
probably
Mithali, go on, please. Yeah.
thank you. I just want to start my opening remarks by saying that if we look at the strategic reserves that India currently has, the statement that has been issued by the government of India in a press information bureau brief that came out just yesterday, we have 9.33 million tons of strategic reserves that the government has on its own that covers us for about 9.6 days. In addition to that, the total reserves of the oil marketing companies are actually coming up to 74 days of coverage as it stands as of yesterday. So, very honestly, at this point in time, I would say India in a very comfortable position with the total oil reserves. What is happening on the ground, as you see with Nayara, as you see with some of the other companies? Nayara is a private company. It doesn't always have access to the strategic reserves of the government and government oil marketing companies. It is probably purchasing its fuels on the open market, and therefore it is passing on some of that cost to the customer. But at the end of the day, when you look at the difference between the way the oil prices have changed in the international markets, starting from $75 at the time, $75 per barrel at the time when the war broke out, to now when we're sitting at a close to $120 per barrel, it is understandable that some amount would be passed on to the customer. Till now, the government has been shielding, and if you look at the fuel subsidy mechanisms that the government has, it has been shielding, and it has also been informing the oil marketing companies to use some of the surplus that they generated in 2025, which was passed on back to the government as dividends. It has allowed the oil marketing companies to use that also to shield the customers. But for some of these private companies like Nayara, that option is not available. So therefore, that's the outcome that we see in the markets today. But I don't think that there is any reason to panic. There is no reason for panic buying. There is no reason to feel that the prices will necessarily go up in the future, because India has been working both on the supply side and the distribution side to secure the oil supply chains. So, therefore, at this point, a good management of this crisis.
Okay. If I could bring in Nishchal, a quick word, Nishchal, what's the ground reality? Do we know of a price rise yet? Nayara is the largest company that supplies oil to India and has Russian investors, and they've not hesitated in passing on the expenses to the consumers in India. So if I'm a consumer and I want to buy fuel for the old, with the old price, do I have to go looking for petrol bunks that is giving an old rate? Is there any way that I know which petrol bunk is charging more and which less?
Right. So as of now, there is no price hike in the horizon, and the situation of availability of fuel is also pretty much there. The situation that we are seeing on the ground, the panic situation at the retail outlets, the fuel outlets, is because it is the customers have seen what has happened with the LPG crisis. So they think because something has happened in the LPG zone, would happen similar things would happen in at petrol pumps. But LPG and crude are different ball games altogether. So we are importing crude from many countries, unlike LPG, which is restricted to a few countries. And we have ample supplies. I would reiterate that there is no need to panic. So what has happened? Some dryouts in Hyderabad that happened because of two or three reasons. One, a retail outlet in a city like Hyderabad gets about 3,000 customers every day. Suddenly, the figure shot up to 4,000, 4,500 customers every day. So obviously, we have limited stocks, and with so much of customers coming in due to panic, we there were some dryouts, but those were purely due to panic, and we have sufficient supplies from at the back end.
Now tell us what Nayara has said. Give us a little context here with Nayara rising prices. It's the news has gone viral. The perception is that fuel prices in India have increased.
No, so Nayara, as you said, has 7,000 petrol pumps all across the country, and it's a major. They have a major network all across the country, and 5 rupees and 3 rupees going up definitely would make a news.
Yeah.
As far as the government oil companies are concerned, the strategic reserves and they're getting oil from Russia, they're getting oil from so many other places, and they're still managing. But how long will they be able to manage? That's a difficult question because crude prices have shot up. The Indian basket is around $156, unlike the Brent crude, it was around 106. So how long will that go on? I can't say, but not in the near future for sure.
What's not in the near future? If Nayara owns 7,000 petrol bunks, you're saying those 7,000 petrol bunks won't reflect the pricing that we see on paper today. Nayara has released just.
Right. So I foresee those customers moving to the oil marketing, the government oil companies.
So how do we move? How do I know as a consumer? How do I know? I don't know what petrol bunk is selling which oil.
No. See, you can be very sure that Nayara has their own branding. So you can make out which retail outlet is Nayara, which is Bharat Petroleum, which is Indian Oil. So if you want cheap fuel, don't go to Nayara. That's what I can say.
So the logos are clear, is it? It's very clearly mentioned
the logos
outside.
are pretty clear. It is not that Nayara is supplying to any of these government oil companies. The oil companies have their own sources and their strategic reserves. So Nayara doesn't get the benefits of all the government schemes and their policies. So that's why they had to increase it.
But are they the largest oil buying company in India?
So I don't think they are the largest oil marketing company, because Nayara if you take Bharat Petroleum has around 25,000 retail outlets. Hindustan Petroleum has about 26,000 retail outlets. Indian Oil has about 50,000 retail outlets. So Nayara is definitely not the largest oil marketing company. Nayara is the largest private oil marketing company. So that is the difference. Private oil company.
Right.
Exactly.
Sir Bijon, what do you think consumers today, are they being misled by saying no fuel crisis, no fuel crisis? Because tomorrow if then there is a crisis, then you'd say you should have, you should have decided better or planned better. You should have kept some for safety, because we don't see any real warning as such. In fact, the only word that comes in from the government is that don't panic. There is supply. But when you believe that and then go to the bunk, you realize, oh God, the bunk has no fuel. And then you go looking for different bunks. Fine, it probably could be due to artificial buying, panic buying that's led to artificial shortage. But that said, how do you believe consumers' rights could be protected here? What kind of communication do people of this country deserve?
See, Nabila, the issue is every consumer looks for convenience. So they have designated pumps where they go to buy their fuel whenever they want to buy. They have their favorite locations, convenient locations. And whether it's public or private, oil company, they also very strategically put these pumps at those locations where they will have a good number of footfalls and good sale coming in. So they also calculate where it should be done. And so at the end of the day, you made a very pertinent point. You said, how does a common man know which bunk is the best in the city? Now that kind of a credible information should be given in a very neutral manner to the consumer to empower the consumer to make an informed choice. Like in my neighborhood, if I've been buying from a particular petrol pump and I suddenly find when I go there is no fuel there available for me, then naturally I will go panic, because mobility is very important for livelihood. every consumer wants mobility because that's the livelihood. And if you curtail that and you don't find an option, like this is the time when the public transport system should become overactive to ensure that people are able to get options in terms of their travel. They don't need to take their cars out or vehicle or two-wheelers out to reach their destination or to do their daily activity. They should now patronize public transport system. Now the public transport system doesn't bother. They don't even bother to figure out how we can improve our services, how we can bring in more frequency in terms of our transportation, how do we help the consumers to make an informed choice, which would help the country in terms of preserving the oil, which is already in short supply. So, these are state government driven strategic decisions which needs to be taken. And we can debate, we can do conversation for hours together on television, but if we don't see it on the ground happening by the people who matter, who take these decisions, who are supposed to be spending their time daily to understand what is the plight of the consumer, and they don't do that job properly, then naturally you will find long queues in petrol pumps, you will panic, you will find people, not able to decide what to do because they're not being guided. They don't have access to credible information.
Yeah.
See, even you don't have, you yourself confess that I don't have information that which petrol pump will give me the right price at the right
and
time.
that's why, do you believe that it's important to have a uniform pricing policy where all bunks should have
Well, I don't believe in uniform. I believe in competitive pricing. The consumer should be having a choice to be able to decide that where do I get a value for money and how do I get that value for money. It should be measurable. The point which I'm making is that if you start kind of a dictating in the pricing, then naturally there would be a lot of manipulation and unfair trade practice coming in. So I always firmly believe that there should be healthy competition based on healthy kind of attributes in terms of ethical business practices. So there should be transparency. Consumers must know that why did my petrol pump go dry? I don't know why it went dry. When everywhere the government is tom-tomming saying that there's no scarcity. That means there's something wrong with the supply chain that needs to be plugged. And no heads roll because of certain inefficiency being brought in the supply chain. I don't understand where this inefficiency comes in and how it comes in. There are experts who are working day and night. There are people who are trained to work in a proper manner to ensure comfort to the consumer and give them the choice. But then when I go to the petrol pump, I suddenly find that the person is smiling at me and saying, petrol nahi hai, smile karte hue. I don't understand. He should be, taken to task. Why is he smiling? It's a failure. It's a failure. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that if somebody does a failure, he should be punished. Why is that petrol pump gone dry? Why is that creating this panic? That means it is artificial. It is being done in a purposeful manner. I do not know what is the purpose. I mean, I can't tell you offhand because these are issues which needs to be investigated and made public. That who went wrong, where and why. But that doesn't happen. You see, unfortunately, I don't find people in the panel discussing. I never see a government official coming in the panel to say what is the truth. I always see some press conference going on with wizard, kind of data. I don't understand that absurd kind of communication. As a layman, I don't understand that. I understand that when I go to a pump, I should be able to get it conveniently, the fuel which I want to buy. I want to see that things go in a manner which is to my comfort because I'm paying for it. I'm the consumer who's paying for everybody and I'm being taken for granted. Why is that? Why is that happening? That means there's lack of accountability, there's lack of transparency in the working, and then we keep on tom-tomming that we are doing a great job, we have all the facilities, nobody needs to panic. Why are you panicking? I understand all that, bhai. I'm not such a dumb consumer. I understand. But when I go to the pump and I don't see the fuel, what is the answer do I get? The only answer
Pump can ensure that you buy whatever little is left.
No, the only answer I get is you just get lost. We don't know about you. Who are you? Who is this consumer? I don't know this consumer. And they're all living out of me. I am paying for their salary. I am paying for their infrastructure. I am paying for everything. But nobody is taking me, seriously. Why is that? What is that attitude? Why is this kind of an attitude in our country? And what I fail to understand is that whoever is doing business in the country, whether it's private or public, everything should be very transparent in terms of pricing, in terms of fixation of price, in terms of ensuring that there is no disruption in supply. That should be the bottom line. I mean, I don't see that happening. I mean, this is 40 years I've been working on consumer rights. I don't see a change. Now it's the same old story we are discussing every evening. I mean, why is it that people are so apathetic towards the person who pays? I don't understand that.
Mithali, if you could come in on this, I want a little clarity on whether or not there is a possibility of a universal price policy of fuel. Shouldn't that be the norm, especially in times of crisis? Because how much will the government be able to control narrative? And this will lead to further panic buying.
No, I totally agree with you. Of course, I agree with Sir that at the end of the day, if this crisis continues, I think the problem is that at this point in time, firstly, this is a crisis situation, and I think even the government is taking it on a day by day crisis. Will the crisis worsen? Will we see a de-escalation? Do we really need to do this immediately? Do we do this after 2 weeks? I think there's a lot of dynamic decision making at a policy level that I'm personally witness to and that I'm seeing. And I think even here, at the policy level, there are a lot of decisions to be taken, and the situation is extremely dynamic. So I feel like as a think tank and as an economist, I can empathize both with the consumer perspective, but also with the policymaker perspective, because once you take a policy action, it then takes some time to even reverse that action. So let's say that today you take an action that during this crisis period, for 2 months we're going to have, say, uniform pricing. Then it also takes some time to roll that back, and also to have a uniform pricing. For example, you would have to do a consultation with all the oil marketing companies, with the petrol pump associations. It's not a step that can be taken without sufficient consultation with the distribution and supply networks. So it is a very important suggestion and something that should be studied, but it does take some time to even do that exploration. And I do see that the government has a lot of these options on the table in terms of uniform pricing is one, increasing the fuel subsidy is a second one, providing cash benefit and relief to the low income consumers is a third one, through a direct benefit transfer to tide over this period. So there are policy options on the table, but because the situation is so dynamic, it does take some time, to arrive at what would be the optimum policy to be taken in each, situation. I think what Sir said is very, very critical. The communication at this point in time has not, been actually to that extent that people understand what's going on. I think that was something during COVID. We found that, through the voices like Love Agarwal, for example, who would come on our screens every day and who would speak to people about the numbers, of the number of recorded COVID incidents, deaths, etc., of the efforts that the government was making on a daily basis for managing the COVID situation, the lockdown situation. I think that communication really instilled a lot more confidence in the people, and they even came forward to take the vaccine because of that, trust building exercise which was done by the government at that time very effectively. I think it would be helpful if we had that sort of a communication strategy coming from the government, so that common persons absolutely understand. And I'm sure that anyone who's listening to the show today, as I describe these different policy options, would also understand that you can't just take a immediate step. You have to consult with the industry before taking a step forward on managing this crisis on different policy options.
Nishal, better communication is what's needed. Are you being communicated with as an association member? Do you have communication from the government? Is there any grievance that your the sector itself is facing, of course, we know rising oil prices, it's a struggle for oil companies to maintain pricing, but is there any help that you have been given as a sector
So,
from the government in this time
I'll,
of crisis?
so I'll just explain the situation. I think there's a gap in understanding uh, why this
Yeah.
panic situation happened at few retail outlets went dry. See, all the petrol pumps have a limited storage, and if we keep a product for as per our sales, so 1 or 2 days of stock. But if if our sales double because of panic, we have to align our logistics. So the depots are mostly in the outskirts of the city, and we just can't, have 2 trips or 3 trips a day. If in normal circumstances, we have our, systems in place that at what time we need the product and what would be our average sales. This is an extraordinary situation. People have started, buying more than what they require. And the second thing which I would like to tell you that the credit lines of petrol pump dealers has also been disrupted. I mean to say that the oil companies earlier used to give a 1 day advance or a weekend advance so that we can top up for the weekend or the holidays or during the day. Now we are on cash and carry mode, so we have to pay for the entire load upfront, and then only we get the supplies. So some disruption in the logistics because of the credit lines have been disrupted.
Okay. But otherwise, communication-wise, you're updated thoroughly?
Yeah, communication wise, there's no. We have been communicated that there is no, the stocks are there. There's no
Okay.
shortage.
Okay.
But what we are expecting from the oil companies and the government, that the credit lines should be restored so that during the weekends or the holidays, the panic situation doesn't erupt again.
Right. Sir Bijan?
Yeah, I only want to respond to my esteemed panel members that look, there are people who are working within the government who are supposed to take prompt decisions, immediate decisions. Like, for example, we just spoke about the credit line. Come on, the bank is ready to give you the money. The bank is there with the money. You are not taking the money. Now, somebody within the policy making exercise has to ensure that the banks move up and say that, look, here is a overdraft I'm giving you temporarily to ensure that you are able to manage your business. Now, these are some of the interventions which needs to be done immediately by the policymakers and given the comfort level to the dealers, to whoever are in the supply chain, not wait for crisis to happen. Come on now. Be a sport. We all know that when there's a crisis, that is the time when your chips go down. So what you need to understand is, I need to see people working overtime at this point of time.
Yeah.
It's not a normal day. So you also, as a distributor or a retailer or whoever you are as a consultant, everybody should be working overtime now because it's the time for crisis. We need to bring comfort to the citizens. We need to worry about them. We need to think about it. If they are, suddenly getting panicked, then we should figure out why they are doing this. What is making them do that? That what I'm trying to tell you is see, I stay in Hyderabad, and I have seen in Hyderabad how things have deteriorated in the last 24 hours because the state government is not working in the manner they should be. This is what I'm trying to say. The state governments have to wake up. They have to
I would like to respond to that.
Yeah, a quick one, as I barely have time, Nishchal.
So when I talk about credit lines, it's not about the credit lines that we take from the banks. It is the working credit limit that we get from the oil companies, because the banks open during the day. We deposit our cash, we do our banking, we get our credit payments and all those things. So oil companies used to release the load first thing in the morning. And during the day, when you used to do our banking, we used to give them the payments. But that credit line has been disrupted. We have to make the payment upfront 6 a.m. in the morning, then get the supplies. So I'm not we keep our credit lines. We keep our credit lines. We keep our credit lines as per our sales. What if our credits, if or whatever sales go, twice of what we are selling on each day?
No, I understand.
So you're saying now that as a retail pumps, you first pay up and then you get the fuel.
Yes. Earlier the situation was.
And I'm saying that I buy in cash. So what I'm saying is your working capital needs to be doubled, and that is where the bank plays a role. I'm trying to tell you that let the bank pay the oil company directly and give them that assurance or the guarantee that you are assured of your payment.
You're saying why should retail pumps bear that load?
Mainly
No,
because
not
banks
there,
will not
that-
take that risk.
that
At
is
this
exactly
time,
what
the
I'm
banks
saying.
will not take such a risk.
Then that's where the government should come in. Bank
No, you are
obviously won't take
wrong.
that risk.
Banks have taken calls in
Government
the
can
past
easily
during
start
COVID.
a credit line in this situation as part of a fuel subsidy, which covers the working capital requirement for the
No.
retailers. And it can also be done that the government comes in to provide a working capital line also to the individual buyers. Both of those options are possible.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
Yeah.
And
All
that's
right. So
and
that's
you
what
know
if that.
the credit lines cannot be increased overnight by the banks also.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
it
takes
can be.
time.
The government wants it can be. It has been done in the past during COVID. It has been done to MSMEs. It has been done to many clusters where there is a crisis. Government has done. So the government is serious. They are responsible. But you all have to represent these issues to the government to make it happen.
Correct.
You can't be sitting quiet. You have
No,
to make
the oil
sure
companies
that
have been
it's taken
told about
much
this
in
long
advance.
time back.
It has to be taken much in advance before the crisis happens.
Okay.
Because you should have anticipated it. It's not the first time. It has happened several times in the past when I have seen petrol pumps going dry. Why is it?
No, it has.
We don't get an
During the
answer to
COVID,
that.
even during the COVID times, we had stocks. We still have stocks. So what I'm saying is the panic has actually carried forward from the LPG crisis. So that's why customers are thinking that we are running out
It's not
of
that.
fuel.
It
We are
is
not.
that.
So
The
just try to
pumps in
understand. If we
Hyderabad
get
have
double
gone dry.
if
I
every
have
shop
seen
has
All right.
pumps in
So,
Hyderabad.
so there's
100
no.
units and if
So
200
what I
customers are there,
what
so
I
it
gather
cannot be
from
handled
this
like that.
talk here is that there is no crisis. There is one private company who's increased the price. That does not mean fuel across the country is expensive. It's just one company, Nayara, that is increased pricing. But most bunks across the country are anything except for Nayara. So you have all government oil agencies that are selling fuel for the original or old rate. That's about 98 rupees per litre for petrol. Is that right?
No, it depends
Yeah,
on
94.77 in
Depends on
Delhi,
the city.
94?
94.77 in Delhi, and 87.67 of diesel.
Diesel. Okay. So that's largely the price across the country even now. All right. So let's
Correct.
keep that and hope that that continues as long as. Thanks very much, three of you, for joining us.